Hello, in this lecture we will continue our governmental accounting problem, entering journal entries and recording those to the adjusting column of this trial balance worksheet. Last time we entered this information in the green area, information, and we entered that into this blue area and recorded that to the trial balance in the center blue column. This time we're going to enter this data starting from G6 on down, which was underneath G5 in the prior lecture. This time we're going to pull it up and so that we can see it right next to the data. Then this all may be hidden already if you're working with an Excel sheet that has been provided. I'm going to hide this. If you're not working with an Excel sheet, that's fine. You can still watch through it and see how this is put together. I'm going to go ahead and hide this area. So I'm going to highlight it, right click and hide, so that we don't have to deal with that at this point. And I'm going to hide these journal entries. So I'm going to go from J to N. And again, this might already have been done on a worksheet if you're working with a worksheet. And right click and hide that. Therefore, all that information that we just hid is recorded in terms of the adjusting column here. So that's where it's all at. And we started with the beginning trial balance. We entered the adjustments up to this point, and this is the ending trial balance. And we are now continuing on with G6. So I'm going to put G6 here. That's where we are at. And what we have is, I've got two there, is invoices for goods recorded as encumbrances in prior transactions. So we have expenditures and encumbrances for the general government, the public safety, public works, culture and recreation, and the total. Remember that encumbrances are used as accounts used to record the estimated amount of purchase orders, contracts, or salary commitments chargeable to an appropriation. So the encumbrances have already been recorded. So we have down here encumbrances. At this point in time, we're saying that the invoices have taken place. So what we're going to do is we're going to record this in the general fund in one lump sum entry. We're not going to break it out into the components of general government, public safety, public works. We're going to take the totals down here. We're going to start with the encumbrances, and we're going to record the encumbrances outstanding. So encumbrances outstanding. And of course, last time we put the encumbrances on the books by putting and debiting encumbrances similar to what we would do with an expense, crediting encumbrances outstanding. This time we're basically taking out the amount that is represented by these invoices. Therefore, we're reversing that transaction. So we have a credit in the encumbrances outstanding. We need to make it go down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a debit. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy in U22, scroll up, put our cursor in Q5, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. The number that we're going to pull over will be the item here, and that's going to be the encumbrances column. So we're saying expenditures, encumbrances, expenditures, encumbrances, expenditures on this size 229,111, encumbrances 229,214. We're taking the encumbrances. We're also taking a credit of something. That something will be the encumbrances. So we have encumbrances down here, recorded as a debit. We're going to make it go down, doing the opposite thing to it. So I'm going to copy U27, scroll up and go to Q6, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to post this out. So we'll go to encumbrances outstanding. So encumbrances outstanding right here. Going to double click and go to the end of that. So we're in U22 plus, and then point to this encumbrances outstanding. That's a debit. This is a credit. Should make it go down to 14,112. We will then record the encumbrances. It's going to be down here. So something's in it in U27. So we're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, and then scroll up and go to the 229, 214 and enter. And that will bring that down to the 14,112 as well. Of course, those being equal and opposite, the debit here, the credit there. The other thing we're going to do with this information is record the expenditures side. So that's this number here, expenditure side, similar to an expense in that we're going to have debit balances. So here's the expenditure in the temporary area column or part of the trial balance. And we need to make it go up because it's an expenditure and has a debit balance. In order to make something go up, we do the same thing to it as what it is, which in this case will be another debit. So I'm going to copy the expenditure in U26, scroll back over, and right-click in Q8, right-click and paste 1, 2, 3. The numbers will be, I'm going to say that equals, and we're looking for the expenditure, 229,111, and we're going to credit the same 229,111, and what that will be too, we haven't paid it yet, so we're going to say it's going to go to a payable account in the orange area, that payable account being vouchers payable. So I'm going to copy vouchers payable in U13 and scroll over here to Q9, right-click, paste 1, 2, 3. There we have it. We're going to post this out now. So I'm going to scroll down to encumbrances in W27. I'm going to double click on it, go to the end of it, say plus, and then I'm going to scroll over and point to this 229,111 and enter, and they record the encumbrances, and then we're going to go to vouchers payable right here in W13 equals, and we're going to point to vouchers payable over here. That's a credit. This is a credit. The vouchers payable then going up in the credit direction. Let's now go over here and highlight that, indicating that we have now done G6. We're going to highlight that. I'm going to make it green and move to G7, next item on the list. State to send cash next year. So we're basically saying that the state has an obligation to pay cash, and therefore we can expect that at this point in time. It's kind of like under an accrual basis where we would say the work had been done. At this point in time, if we're saying the cash is going to be collectible, that's the point in time that we're going to basically record the revenue and the fact that the money is now owed to us and we expect to receive it at some point in time. Therefore, we're going to have to record a asset, meaning a receivable, an asset in the form of a receivable. So it could be kind of like accounts receivable, but we're going to make the asset called due from state government, what is then received from us due to the obligations that have been set up. So that's in U12. It has a debit balance. It's going to go up because the state owes us more money. Right-clicking, copy, and going to Q11, right-click, and paste 1, 2, 3. The amount we're going to use will be equal to this 46, and we're going to put a credit for the 46 as well, and the credit will go to revenue. So we're saying that this is the form of revenue for the government entity, and therefore revenue has a credit balance, as it usually does even for a for-profit, and we need to make it go up. Therefore we're going to do the same thing to it, which in this case is another credit. So U24, I'm going to right click, copy, we're going to go to Q12, right click, and paste it 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to post this out. So we're going to say due from state government. That's in W12. So I'm going to go to W12, double click because something's in it, go to the end of it and plus, and then point to that 46,000, and that's a debit. This is a debit. That's going to make this amount go up by the 46,000. Then we're going to go to revenue down here in W24. Something's in it. I'm going to double click on it, go to the end, say plus, point to this 46,000 in S12, enter, and revenue goes up by that 46,000. We're back in balance by the green zeros here. And if we scroll back over, going to highlight G7, indicating that we have completed G7, moving on to G8. G8 says that we made payments for voucher payments due to federal government, due to state government. Remember, those are the payroll taxes that we owed, and that's the total there. So now we're making a payment, so we know cash is being paid. So that's oftentimes what I like to look at first. Is cash affected? We're going to say, yeah, cash is affected this time. It's going down. We're making payments. Cash has a debit balance. In order to make it go down, we'll do the opposite thing to it, which is a credit. So I'm going to copy cash. Scroll back over here. Now I'm going to put it a couple lines down so that we can put the credit on the bottom, because traditionally credits go on the bottom. So I'm going to put it in G17 or Q17 here. Right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. Now I'm not going to put the amount yet. I don't know the amount yet, but I know that that's a credit, and that can give an indication that we're going to be debiting the other things. And what are we going to be? Actually, we do know the amount. It's the total here, but I'm going to put the other numbers in there anyways and use cash as the plug number. So we have the vouchers payable, we have the due to federal government, got the due to state government. Those are the entities that we are paying. If we look at the trial balance, of course, those are going to be our 3 orange liability accounts. Vouchers payable due to the federal government, due to the state government. That's what our organization owes. Therefore, it has a credit balance. We need to make it go down because we're paying these off, or at least a portion of them. And therefore, we're going to do the opposite to all 3 of them, which is going to be a debit. So I'm going to copy these 3. I'm going to highlight these 3 orange areas, right click and copy, and scroll back over here. We're going to put this on top, so we're in Q14, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. So then we're going to pull the numbers over, so the numbers will be in R14 equals that 280,000, and in R15 that equals 292,602, and in R16 that equals the 116.26. I'm going to use the negative sum formula. It should sum up to this 628, but I want it to be a credit balanced or a negative balance in Excel. Therefore, instead of using equals sum, we're going to use negative sum. Negative sum. And then we're going to add up. I'm going to add up. I'm just get used to adding up all both columns here, because that's if something moves around, then the formula will pick it up. So we're going to say enter. There is that. Now we can post that out. So we're going to go to vouchers payable. So vouchers payables in W13. Something's in it. Going to right click on it, plus, and we're going to point to that 280,000, which is a debit, and the account has a credit in it. Therefore, it's going to go down. Then we're going to double click on W14, which is due to federal government, due to federal government, so that we're on W14, double clicking, going to the end, plus, and then we're going to point to this 292,602, which is a debit. We have a credit in the account, so when we hit enter, it will go down, because it's the opposite. Then we're going to do the same thing for due to state government. Here it is here, due to state government there. We're going to post it then in W15, double clicking on it because something's in it, plus, and then pointing to this 116.26, which is a debit. A credit is currently in the account. Therefore, when we select enter, it will go down. And then we're going to go to the cash account, W5, something's in it. We're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, and then we're going to post this cash, which is a credit balance here. It's a debit up there. Therefore, they are opposites and will then go down. So that's going to be it for that transaction. Let's go back over to G8. And we said that this is all green. I'm going to make that green. And let's just check that we're in balance too. That might be good. So we still have the green zeros. We are in balance, so we are good. And we are on now. In P18, we're on G10. We'll move down to G10. Actually, I skipped G9. We are now on G9. G9 says that the current year receivables are now delinquent. So we're saying that what was in the receivables at this point in time is now delinquent. Now we can get that from the trial balance. It should be there right now, and these numbers should match up to the numbers given in the data. So it's kind of like a check figure we could be using. So we have the 67,786. We've got the 8,309. That should match what is over here on the actual trial balance. And the idea now is that it was current, and now it's past due, this amount, because we haven't yet got paid. Therefore, we need to move it from the current to the delinquent. So basically, we need to make these accounts go to 0, and we need to then include them in the delinquent area. So I would think about it this way first. How do we make these accounts go to 0? We have a current receivable. It has a debit balance. Therefore, we're going to credit it to make it go down. So I'm going to copy that. And I'll put it underneath, skipping a line to put the credit on the bottom, right clicking and paste 1, 2, 3, and the credit will be, and again, I'm going to pull it from here. It's also in the data too, but it's going to be a credit of 67786. And then we're going to need to debit something, and therefore we're going to debit something. Where will that debit go? Well, it's going to go into the delinquent. So here's the delinquent account. Of course, it has a debit balance because it's still a receivable and an asset, and it's going to go up. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put that on top and paste it 1, 2, 3. So that should take care of the receivable. Now we need to take care of the allowance, which has a credit balance being a contra asset account, and we need to make it go down. It has a credit, therefore we're going to do the opposite, which is a debit. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to debit it. You could make these two separate journal entries. I'm just going to put them in one. Note that I'm not putting the debits on top in this journal entry. I'm kind of thinking it through with what makes the most sense to me to think the transaction through. Right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. The amount will be 8309. So 8309. We're going to credit the same 8309, and that credit then will go to, I'm sorry, I pulled the delinquent here, so this should be taxes receivable allowance here. Allowance. Copying the allowance, posting it here. And then we need the other allowance, which is going to be the delinquent allowance, and copy the delinquent allowance and post it there. And of course, the delinquent allowance also has a credit balance, and therefore a credit should make it go up. So let's see if this does what we believe it should do, meaning it should reduce the receivable down to 0 for the current portion, as well as the allowance down to 0 for the current portion, increase the receivable for the delinquent portion, and increase the allowance for the delinquent portion. Let's see if it does that. We're going to post this tax receivable delinquent first. So that's going to be here. Tax receivable delinquent in W8 has something in it. Double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, and then point to the 67,786, and that will make this debit account go up in the debit direction. Then we're going to go to the receivables for the current. So that's in W6, and double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, we're going to point to the 67,786. That should make this account go to 0. So it goes down to 0. Now we're going to do the same for the allowance. We have this account here, allowance for uncollectible current taxes. So here's the current portion. So that's in W7. Going to double click on that, go to the end of it, plus, and then point to this 8309. That should make this amount go down to 0. And then we're going to go to the allowance for uncollectible delinquent account. Right there, we're going to go to W9 equals, point to that 8,309, and that should make this amount go up. So there we have that. So now we have finished G9, so I'm going to highlight G9, make it green. We will then be going to G10 as the next item. Next item, G10, says that we have interest and penalties receivable on delinquent taxes, and we have the estimated uncollectible amount. So we have delinquent taxes of $4,400, and we believe that $1,400 of those will not be collectible. Therefore, we have $4,400 that basically at this point in time, we have got the revenue. We kind of, if it was a for-profit, we'd say we earned the revenue, and then therefore we would record it. We are saying here that it's collectible at this point in time. Therefore, we're going to record the revenue and the related receivable at this point in time. So the receivable is going to be an asset. So if we scroll up top and look for our assets, some type of receivable related to interest and penalties, we have U10 here. There's our receivable in the asset accounts for interest and penalties. I'm going to copy that, scroll down, paste it in Q24, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. The amount will then be, scroll back over here a bit, equal to that 4,400. Now, we're going to say that these are penalties on delinquent taxes, so we're going to have a portion of those we do not believe is going to be collectible, and we're going to say that that is a credit of 1,400, and we're going to record that right into the allowance right when we record the receivable. So we're going to scroll up to the allowance, and we're going to say, here's the interest receivable, here's the allowance, the contra asset account, representing the amount that we believe will be not collectible. We're going to copy that, scroll down into Q25, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. The difference then, 4,400 minus the 1,400, or 3,000, will then be revenue. That's what we will be earning on this in a sense in terms of charging interest and penalties. So we're going to say, I'm going to do that with the negative sum function. So we're going to say negative sum, and I'm going to highlight the 4,400 down to the 1,400 and enter. There's the 3,000. That puts us in balance. If we highlight the whole thing, we have 0, meaning the debits minus the credits equals 0, meaning we're in balance. We're going to put that 3,000 to the account of revenue in U24. So I'm going to copy revenue, right-click, copy, paste it in Q26, right-click, paste, 1, 2, 3. Then we will record this out. So we will then go to the interest receivables up top. So here we have interest receivables in W10, something's in it. I'm going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, scroll down and point to that 4,400. We then have the allowance for uncollectible accounts for the interest and receivables. Here's the allowance for uncollectible accounts. We're going to go to W11 equals, scroll down, we're pointing to that 1,400 and enter. Then we're going to go to the revenue. So revenue is down here in W24. Double click on it, go to the end of it, say plus, and we're going to point to that 3,000 and enter. That should make revenue go up, puts us back in balance here. We have a slight credit in the charges in fund balance. Going to scroll back, and we have now completed G10, highlighting that, right click, paste it, or make it green. We're now on the last one we're going to do, we're not, because that yellow one is not going to be a journal entry, so we're going to do G11 is the next item. G11 has some amendments to the budget. So we got some amendments to the budget, one being to the services will then be decreased. We have the public safety decreased, public works decreased, and culture and recreation increased. So these are going to be some adjustments we will be putting in place for the budget, meaning we are going to be adjusting the estimated revenue account. So estimated revenue here, and we know that estimated revenue has a debit balance, which is kind of unusual because we know that revenue accounts have a credit balance. Therefore, the estimate's going to have the opposite, estimated revenue having a debit balance. So we can basically compare those two out and see a difference fairly quickly. And therefore, if we are then going to make estimated revenues go down by 2,000, we need to do the opposite thing to it then, which in this case would be a credit. So I'm going to copy estimated revenue, going to put that right underneath, so it could be a credit. Credit's going on bottom, right click and paste it, 1, 2, 3. The other items, including the public safety being decreased, the public works increase, and the cultural and recreation increase, we are going to group together and put those into the appropriations. So we have a decrease, an increase, and an increase. So if we basically take the 15 plus the 640 minus the 4,400, we get the 11,240, which will be an increase. And if we look at our appropriations, we see that appropriations has a credit balance, and therefore, in order to increase it, we need to do the same thing to it, which in this case would be another credit. So we're going to take appropriations in U25, right-click and copy. We're going to put that in Q30, right-click and paste, 1, 2, 3. So the amount will then be, and I'm going to put both these amounts in. We have a credit of the, I don't need a credit of the 2,000, and then I'm going to say that this is the negative sum of the 4,004, the 640, and the 15, and enter. Then we will have a debit that's going to be the plug, which means we're just going to add the 11,240 and the 2,000 for 13,240, but I'm going to do that with the negative sum function, and if this is in the way, you can just move this and then highlight these 4 cells and enter. And that will go to the budgetary fund balance. So here's the budgetary fund balance, copy, and I'm going to put that in Q28 right on top of our journal entry and paste it, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's post this last one out, post in last one. So we have the budgetary fund balance, that's going to be here. So we're posting this there. And so we're going to do it in W21, something's in it. We're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, and point to this 13,240. Then the next item is estimated revenue. There it is here, estimated revenue. We're going to go to W23, double click, go to the end of it, plus, and then point to that 2,000, and that will bring the estimated revenue down as it said to do. And then we're going to go to the appropriations in W25, double click, go to the end of it, and plus, point into this 11,240, which is a credit, bringing appropriations up as we were instructed to do. So that's going to be it for the journal entries for the general fund.